1/3 of the young generation, they want to work in AI, robotics, and all that. Fantastic. But when you ask the same question, do you really want to work in industry? It's like one young person out of 10 person. And so for me, this is worrying because it gives the impression that industry is not transforming itself.
Without leadership, you're going to get nowhere. Curiosity, vision, courage, I think that's the recipe. Welcome to the Work Intelligence Lab podcast. I'm your host, Carla Fletcher. This episode is part of our Now and Next series, where we revisit conversations with global leaders from Davos. Today, I'm joined by our lovely Chief Growth and Innovation Officer at ManpowerGroup, Valerie. Welcome.
Thank you, Carla, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
Valerie, at Davos, you spoke with Schneider Electric about how AI is transforming industry. But what stood out is not just automation, it was something bigger. We're being forced to rethink talent architecture. And there's a lot of talks around redefining productivity and confronting the widening threat of inequality, which I think you're very passionate about. And at the same time, our talent shortage report has just come out that 72% of employers are reporting talent shortages. So before we dive into all of the detail, do you just want to give us a brief introduce yourself and your role at ManpowerGroup?
So as you kindly shared at the beginning, I'm Valerie Beaulieu, very French name, based in Paris. I'm the Chief Growth and Innovation Officer for the Manpower Group. I've joined the group just 6 months ago after almost 30 years in the tech industry. And I'm very excited to be at this intersection of tech and human power that resonates so well with our human first and digital always mantra that we have in the Manpower Group.
Fantastic, and welcome. I've been waiting patiently to get you on with us to talk about the things you love, really, which are AI, inequality, and all that good stuff. So, before we continue the conversation, I'm going to go back to a clip that you had with Schneider Electric about their global lighthouse site in Wuhan, which was a very interesting case study. So let's play that clip, and then we'll come back to it.
Gwen, very warm welcome to the Manpower Group recording. We're very happy to have you. Do you want to give a few words about yourself, your title, what you work for?
Thank you, Valerie. Super happy to be here and to share this conversation with you. So I'm in charge of industrial automation for Schneider Electric.
Thank you very much. Well, Gwen, you just shared with me that you learned today that the WEF awarded Schneider Electric with the Global Lighthouse Prize for what you've done with your talent in AI in one of your sites. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, well, thank you for the question. I think we are all about AI everywhere, but we really wanted to highlight what's happening on the ground. We have one plant in Wuhan, in China, that has been recognized. And what did we do? In fact, we covered AI throughout the entire holistically way, meaning that we were working with schools for vocational training. We were working also with our technicians to go towards AI-assisted maintenance for our technicians. And therefore, we reduced the numbers of turnover of the technicians. They were like 50% initially and now go down to 6%. So we reduced quite significantly. It means that the way to leverage on AI was super attractive for them. That's another example. In this site also, we've been working in order to reduce the timing to have product launch thanks to AI. And we have reduced by 3 the timing of reduction of new product launch. So I think it's giving an example of the value that can be created thanks to AI. And behind the scene, it was all about training and making sure that all over the place, there were a strong emphasis and understanding on how to leverage AI. And therefore, we have increased the level of adoption of AI on this basis. So I think it was a mix of holistic view, not looking at a certain category of personnel, but looking all across everyone that could leverage AI in their day-to-day. It was also working in partnership with trainings, with vocational schools, etc. And it was all about making sure that everyone can leverage because they have the right skills and that we would upskill all the people.
Okay, it seems like you had a very exciting and informative discussion at Davos, Valerie. I suppose what struck me there was how the focus was around a complete workforce redesign, partnerships with schools, new technician pathways, and training that was really embedded from the start. What do you think changed in that talent model that made this successful? And then again, what are you seeing wider than that could complement that success that they had at the Wuhan site?
Well, I think this example shows that AI is much more than just technology. And I am a technophile. I love technology, but technology is nothing if it's not to the benefit of solving a problem or solving something, making something better for human interaction. And I think this is a big belief that we have, that Schneider is actually also doing, is how first and foremost can we use AI and Gen AI to augment humans, to make the work easier, to make the work nicer to perform. And there is this catchphrase that we used to say in Davos all the time, which is Davos is not coming after your job. It's coming to your job to really enhance the way that you are really performing the job. And I think to your point, one of the critical elements to make it work is to make sure that you build the trust with your employees that indeed it's not going to disrupt them, but it's going to help them to just be their better self at work, to really expand their own potential. And so this investment that they made in skilling and reskilling, for me, is the condition of building that trust. And it's very interesting when you read research, most of the research correlate adoption, or effective adoption, I should say, with training. And on the other hand, you see when adoption goes up without the training, actually the trust goes down. So this importance of trust to really make the most of your investment is absolutely critical. And so, as I've heard also at Davos, a lot of people are thinking about AI as a data problem or a tech problem. But what about the skills? And one thing that is also very critical, which she didn't mention in this portion of the clip, is also the leadership. So if I think about AI adoption, how it's redefining the talent set, it's really data set, skill set, mindset.
And this is really, I would say, leadership is having to redefine themselves as well, right? Just to that point, because I find that an interesting one at the moment. They're faced with their own um, evolution of what it is leadership should look like. So one of the things you mentioned is that training is reducing fear, and what our reports, employees who are properly trained are twice as likely to see AI as an opportunity rather than a threat. I want to take us to a second clip where we talk a little bit about youth and talent pipeline with Schneider, which I really found very, very insightful.
We were discussing before preparing for the interview the impact on attractiveness of the industry. And I was curious, now that we are mixing AI in the industry, is this a way to attract more young people to your industry?
You know, that was a question I was asking myself because, of course, we want to attract more people that love AI. We are digitalizing all our plans. We have more than 200 plans. So everything that we sell to our customers, we want to apply to ourselves so that we can showcase concrete, tangible use case, value proposition, etc. And so I was looking at, how to track those profiles, and normally they should come earlier to us because of digitalization of the industry. It's something that is appealing for them. And believe it, 1/3 of the young generation, they want to work in AI, robotics, and all that. Fantastic. But when you ask the same question, do you really want to work in industry? It's like one young person out of 10 person. And so for me, this is worrying because it gives the impression that industry is not transforming itself. Whereas this is where we need to invest. And this is where it's happening. Digitalization of the factories, leveraging AI, but also sustainability with circularity, etc., that I mentioned about. So I think there is a big revolution to happen in the industry, whatever segment it is, by the way. It can be in mineral, mining, water, energy and chemicals, or whatever. We need to transform our own industry. And that's why we need to attract this young generation that perceive the impact of having a digitized plant that is good for the environment and good for the future of our planet, right? So
my favorite bit from that clip, Valerie, was where she was talking about 1/3 of young people wanting to work with AI, but not in industry. And the fact that that industry is using AI and is at the forefront of it at the moment. So if you could change one thing tomorrow to make industrial and infrastructure sectors more attractive digitally to ambitious talent, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to be very provocative. I would put that in movies. I think one of the main challenge we're facing to attract young talent to more vocational or trade profession is the representation or the lack of in our society, and the fact that we continue to associate success to knowledge work. And when you think about it, knowledge work is likely to be the area that is going to be the most disrupted. Just like during the Industrial Revolution, robots disrupted the factory floor. Nowadays, it's AI and Gen AI that is disruptive of the knowledge work. And I think this is an area where we probably need to reestablish our graduation of values in terms of which roles are important to society, which ones are essential work. And it's very interesting. I was in Davos talking to clients who are in the aerospace industry, for example. And of course, they need engineers. Of course, they need data analysts. Of course, they need data scientists. Absolutely, yes. But they also need welders and boilermakers and people who can, with their hands, just make things happen. You don't build a rocket that goes on the moon just on a computer. There is a point where it has to turn into something real. And I think this is where we also need to transform that proposition that we have to the younger generation to attract them. And I want to rebound to one of the themes that we were having in the first part of the podcast around training and skilling. I think we can also learn a lot from the success stories of Switzerland with apprenticeship, where there is a true collaboration between public institution, academics, and businesses to together define what's the curriculum that is needed to make sure that we enhance to the max employment of the youth coming out of school. And I think there is something here that is very interesting to learn in terms of workforce planning that needs to start very early. It may also redefine training and education. And we know that in the current days where uncertainty is the new normal, being resilient and having resilience at the core is what is going to make companies and businesses, institutions successful. So back to that core importance of continuous learning, continuous training that will build the resilience that company needs to adjust to any type of disruption, be it disruption coming from, well, we had COVID in the 2020s, we had AI now, but what's next in store? We actually don't know. No one has a crystal ball. The only thing that is constant is this change. And so having a system by which you are very agile to continuously train yourself as an individual, and in companies as training your employees, probably that's at the core of how we redefine workforce and workforce planning.
Well, is it as well how we redefine productivity? Because in the conversation with you've spoken about resistance, and I think one of the things, the importance was about communicating the benefits of AI clearly. But as we are redesigning the workforce, the productivity must evolve with it. And I think you alluded to the fact that we need to stay agile. So how do we define productivity whilst being able to be agile where we cannot see the future without our crystal ball?
I love this question about productivity, especially with regards of the impact of AI. I think in the early days of AI, 2 years ago, there was this promise, and I'm having air brackets, I don't know if we have a video here, but this promise that you are going to do more with less. Understood, you will be able to get rid of people. And I'm sorry to be very blunt and violent, but that was kind of the belief. And the big tech companies, they were saying, hey, look, how are you going to replace that many people with technology? And by the way, you see recent examples of these tech companies using AI as a reason, may I dare to say an excuse, for massive layoffs. But what we are realizing, and I was very, very encouraged by the conversation in Davos, is that productivity is much more than doing more with less. It's also about doing better with the same. And I think redefining the conversation, not only around I'm going to be able to replace human by machine, which was kind of the promise of the industrial age. I think here what the conversation I participated in Davos were much more about what kind of output AI can help me achieve. Is it better quality in my factory floor? Is it more precision in how fast I can deliver an output to my client? Is it better speed because I can go faster and these milliseconds will allow me to provide a better product or a better value? I think redefining productivity not only as a save, but as an addition and a creation of value by putting together what technology can do to augment human and our creativity and our ability to invent new things is at the core of what technology can bring. And that's why also I think some of the experiments that started with AI, which were mostly about spot pilots that would enhance by a few minutes here, maybe a couple of hours there, the productivity of a specific role, they didn't yield massive redefinition of work. I even had a client from the life science industry who was telling me, wow, this is the first technology improvement that is yielding so little return. And I was a bit shocked because of the buzz there is around AI. But actually, there is so much time that is still today leverage to have the oversight about what AI is doing. It's still making a lot of mistakes. It still had to learn. It's costing money. Think about the license that you need to pay. Think about the token that you need to pay every time you use. Think about also the environment impact. We know that AI queries are, in terms of electricity and the power needed to power the AI queries, is going through the roof and actually hindering all our commitment to reduce emissions. So I think when you look at the overall picture, what I was very excited about in Davos is that the business community is taking the full dimension of the conversation to think about AI as really an enhancer of systemic issues or challenges companies had that will be or could be solved by adding AI in the tool set of what we can accelerate in the companies.
Love it. There's so many questions that came from all of those, all of that insight that you just shared with us. And I think one of the things that it makes me think of is this idea of access, this idea of inclusion and access. So you're talking about the wider societal impact that AI could have. So AI is redesigning work, yes, but is it redistributing opportunity? And if we look at previous, revolutions, I think in terms of tech, it's normally access to those who already have the higher skills, more autonomy, better access to training. And so there is this conversation looming, and I think you've had it too, where are we at a risk of really widening the digital divide inside organizations? And I suppose my question to you is, what are you seeing where or thinking in terms of where AI can become a tool to unlock potential and access that reinforces opportunity rather than inequality?
Well, thanks, Carla, for that question around AI and the digital divide. I think it's a topic that is not often put on the table, or too rarely, I would say, to my taste. Because already before AI, there was already this divide between the ones who had access and the ones who had not. And if you think about women, for example, women being overrepresented in frontline workers, they were already the ones with lesser access and lower adoption of the new Gen AI. And that's worrisome in terms of having access to better economic opportunities, because that's what society is about, is how you distribute in a way that is as equitable as possible economic opportunities, so that all the society will lift from the benefit and the value that will be created by AI. So I don't have a magic wand, but technology will always be as good as we humans want it to be. And so I think it will take probably a combination of making sure that we train and skill and reskill everybody, because the reality, we didn't talk much about that, but not everything will be top down. And as much as I mentioned that leaders need to have the courage to drive the transformation in the hardest processes and core processes of the companies, no leaders can imagine all the places where AI can bring value. And so making sure that you involve what I call the practitioner in defining the new ways of working will be critical. But what if they don't have access to AI? They cannot even imagine what could be possible. And one of the examples I love to give is the one about nurses. Because you may say, oh, nurses is absolutely the type of job that will not be impacted by AI. Yes, of course. I mean, how can you, really provide care through a machine? I know there are some experiments, but it will never replace like the presence of a human that will be able to understand implicit signals, not explicit signals that a machine would capture to really be close to the patient where it needs. But what is a little less known is that a vast majority of the workload of nurses is actually hindered by tons of admin tasks. So having to fill in reports, reading reports, passing on to the next shift. And so the point is, and there's been experiment, when you give digital tools and AI to nurses, they find ways to make their job most likable, and where they can really free time delegating these less interesting tasks to an AI that can take notes, summarize reports, fill in forms for them, while really spending more time where it cannot be replaced, which is with the care and spending time with patient. So I am a big believer that every role in society may have a use of AI for the better, if only they're given the chance to experiment and to explore what the art of the possible could be.
And I think to your point with a lot of these frontline workers that we have is they are overstretched time-wise. So their well-being generally is quite low. So if they were to do these tasks more effectively and cut time administratively, perhaps they could have some time back for their own personal well-being, and kind of be working less hours and not the overtime of shifts, etc. that they're currently faced with, right? Um, I know that again, DE and I can sometimes, or just inclusion, it sometimes can be a tick box exercise for a lot of organizations, and um, I don't want to use the word metric, but how do you think that AI transformation should be measured against opportunities and equality and access to the disadvantaged?
The AI impact can be measured in the way it is actually changing for the better the fabric of our society. Do we actually see, the ultimate measure will be, do we see a better distribution of the economic opportunity? Do we have everybody able to work? And this is something that is a big taboo, a big elephant in the room about AI, with some of these tech bros, again, air bracket, promising us a world where we won't have to work anymore. But this is not something that's going to happen anytime soon. And I would argue, is it even something that we want? Aren't we defined as human by the dignity of work? And at the Manpower Group, we are putting millions of people to work every day. And I can tell you that dignity that you get from participating to society is something that human crave for, and that's how you feel that you belong. So I think the ultimate measure of a reasoned and informed adoption of AI will be, are we living in a society that is more equitable, where we all have a chance to express our full potential at work and outside of work? I think your point about work-life balance is absolutely critical. And I want to say on this one, and it's a side comment maybe, we're not talking about the cognitive load that AI is putting on knowledge workers. We're all saying it's going to augment you, but we're not saying what does it do when AI is able to produce reports in minutes, when it was taking some members of your team a couple of days. You had actually time to digest all this information for yourself and be able to make sense of it to build your next decisions. What does it do to a leader today, or anyone who's a knowledge worker, when by a push of a button to the AI of your choice, you can have a summary of a market context, competitive background, etc. You have this cognitive overload that is also extremely tiring. And I think there are things we still need to understand in terms of how are we going to manage that in the long run so that we can continue to bring our best. But definitely the level of stress that may come from this knowledge overload or summary overload is something that we need to keep in mind as we move forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting one when you say that, because I think one of the things around what people are looking for in terms of skills, in terms of the soft skills that we get according to our reports, are the analytical skills, and those sorts of things. And are we allowing AI to kind of remove that cognitive function and interrogate the information in front of us, as opposed to just accept it and regurgitate it back to our board or clients and so on and so forth. So that's a very interesting observation. We're coming to the end of our conversation, and I could sit and speak about diversity and inclusion with you and access to equality for a very long time. But I think that's what I'd love to hear from you, and you work in the world of growth and innovation. So you're sitting at the forefront of what most businesses are thinking. How do we innovate and grow in some very, very tumultuous times? So if you were to give a advice to leadership around what they should be doing to redesign their workforce in this AI transformation or otherwise, what would it be?
Well, I think I am the one to give advice to very strong leader in the world. But what I've observed of the most successful leaders is a couple of traits. I would say first, they're all very curious. And I think there was a consensus also in the World Economic Forum and the people I'm meeting regularly for work, which is without leadership, you're going to get nowhere. And so the leader cannot delegate the transformation, and such a big transformation that will have such an impact on how it's going to define the workforce in their company, to somebody else. So being curious, developing your own vision on what good looks like, I think that's very important, even if no one has a crystal ball. So the person who make me believe that they have it all figured out, I won't believe that for a second. But at least having a vision to have a way, a destination where you want to get your team at. And then you will need courage. Because if you really want to make the most of what technology can offer and bring your team along to really bring that to life, it will take courage to bring them with you, and it will not be always easy. Transformation is hard, and it's going to be harder as we move forward in that climate of uncertainty. So curiosity, vision, courage, I think that's the recipe.
Valerie, thanks for that. And I think one thing is making it attractive, but the second thing is the challenges and the difference of what the world of work looks like for youth today coming into the world of work. What are your thoughts on that and how that's changing how we can prepare our youth?
Yeah, I think youth are in a very specific junction as we speak. Some are going to learn, hopefully, AI as part of their study, but what they are going to be confronted is that a number of so-called junior role, especially in the knowledge workspace, that are going to be more and more delegated to AI, who can do in minutes what an intern would have been doing in the past. So on the one hand, it is true, it is a threat. It's an immediate threat because when you replace, and I'm going to give the example of paralegal profession, if you replace paralegal with a chat of some sort or a bot of some sort who can do all the screening of cases to bring you the report and the summary, how are you going to onboard these legal interns? And what strikes me is that I was talking to a lawyer in a very big legal firm in the US, and she was telling me that actually this was a very lame way of onboarding students. So she probably remember her days when she had to plow through, thick files and how boring it was. And what she was, I think, of very, very much challenging herself in the way we need to learn new ways of onboarding the junior talent, because we need the junior talent. We need these fresh minds coming out of schools. We need to prepare them for the most senior roles that are going to free up as we have more and more people going to retirement. And she was just challenging the fact that we need to rethink onboarding in a way that will be more effective than just having to read through boring cases, which actually didn't teach you much about the job. So I think that's also what AI is doing. It's also challenging old ways. So there is the augmentation that we've talked about earlier, but there is also the opportunity to do things totally differently. And I need to say I'm excited about it.
I think we were talking a little while ago about how augmentation of certain roles, example, maybe you want to share that example of engineers and how they're augmenting some of their lower level tasks, but how does that elevate the more junior entry level roles?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there is an opportunity to rethink the distribution of roles in your organization. And when I was in the World Economic Forum, I discussed with one of our life science clients, and she was telling me that today she has to have engineers to do support because their products, they are in the hardware, medtech type of products, and they requires the support of an engineer. It's very hard to let someone with no engineering background to help the clients. But what they've realized is that with AI, they could actually augment some of their technicians to be able to do that at least first and second level of support, which would then in return free up time for engineers so that she can redeploy them to higher value tasks like R&D or development of products out of some fundamental research that they are driving. And I found this very interesting. And it goes back to that fear that people have that they are going to be replaced. Actually, in some of the research and the research on the Employment Outlook survey that you were referring earlier, we actually saw that 58% of the companies we ask are actually planning to recruit. So it's interesting to see there is not only this anxiety about redeployment, but also looking at what can I do differently where I will actually recruit more people, but to do things that are totally different. And so my engineers that I could, and I'm opening brackets again, replace by augmented technician, not only I would make the work of the technician more interesting because they will be, having to deal with more interesting topic, more challenging. And then at the same time, my engineers will also do things that could be more interesting by working more on research, for example. So I think these are also considerations that sometimes we stay stuck. We think, okay, I'm just going to replace this population by a machine or reduce the number of these people by a machine. But what about to change the nature of the people you have to perform certain tasks and augment them with a machine? And it's a win-win for everybody. I would say it's then challenge your ability to judge the performance. Who is going to perform, the person with AI or without AI? How do you judge the individual, the combination of the two? Well, that's a big debate.
It may come a time when that's not what we're even measuring anymore. The difference between somebody working with or without AI, it will just be an adoption, and we'll be measuring the output, I think, eventually. That's probably how I see it. Well, Valerie, listen, it's been fantastic to speak to you. I could talk to you about diversity and inclusion, AI, innovation, augmentation all day long, and I know you are working and alongside a lot of organizations facing these issues around talent, workforce redesign, and so on and so forth. Is there any last thoughts you'd like to leave with the audience as we wrap up?
Well, thank you so much, Carla. I think this was lovely to have a discussion. And yes, maybe, stay curious. There is so much out there to leverage. So thank you very much for having me on the show.
And we'll have you back again. And for those of you who want to see the full video that Valerie and I are referring to, you can go to Manpower Group's YouTube channel and look up the Now and the Next series. And I'll see you all again on the next episode.